And in fact, historically, if you look at the worst terrorists, they have been either right-wing counter-revolutionary acts of terror, or they have been acts of state terrorism. That cuts in many respects to the heart of this, where there are clear differences between a progressive or proletarian working class view of terrorism and what the bourgeoisie uses to define terrorism. Bourgeoisie and imperialist powers define terrorism anything which threatens their state security, right? We, on the other hand, progressive forces around the world, draw a very sharp line between individual terrorism and the collective efforts of people to fight for revolutionary change sometimes through armed struggle, like in Colombia, for instance. The FARC was founded in 1964, 63 or 64, as a peasant army to resist the attacks of the landlords and the Colombian state. And they have been fighting a war of insurgency for decades, but they have not targeted civilians. Same thing with the MK, the armed wing of the ENC. They did not go and do senseless massacres of innocent people. They focused their attack on fighting the apartheid regime and so on. There's a fundamental difference between armed liberation struggles and wanton acts of terrorism. And in fact, historically, if you look at the worst terrorists, they have been either right-wing counter-revolutionary acts of terror, or they have been acts of state terrorism. So, people say, well, one person's terrorist, another person's freedom fighter. But there's some truth to that. But it's not just a question of subjective opinions that everybody's got a different view. Well, you have to look at it objectively, and there's a fundamental difference between liberation struggles and groups that are committing just sensationalist crimes against innocent civilian populations. Even in some cases, however, you take the case of Boko Haram. So yes, they have been committing some terrible crimes, but a lot of that is also connected to the role that the Nigerian government played in propping up the interests of was it Exxon or Chevron?
Shell oil.
Shell oil, yeah. And the oil exploitation and the displacement of the peasantry and any resistance that arose to that. So, and that's not to justify what Boko Haram has done, for instance, to young girls and various crimes that they have committed in some villages and so on. But nevertheless, yeah, we draw a very sharp line, about terrorism, and that goes back, in fact, way back to the, there were debates like this more than a century ago, during the time of the early period of the Russian Revolution. There was a debate between the Narodniks and the Leninists over this question, and Lenin said, was critical of the Narodniks not from some moralistic point of view, but he said that acts of individual terrorism are self-defeating for the following reasons. First of all, if you try to blow up a carriage with the Tsar or somebody from the Tsar's family in, well, they'll just put somebody else in the Tsar. So killing individuals isn't the answer. Secondly, he said that the problem is that it relegates the masses of the people to the sidelines. Individual actions of heroism or daring actions relegate the masses of the people to passivity. And he said that any real revolution has a mass character. It's not something that's done by small groups of, self-appointed saviors or martyrs. Um, and he went further than he said, and it hands the state the pretext to repress all of the people. So you're not building a mass movement, you're not building a real revolutionary movement, and in the process, you're helping the state to repress all of the people's forces. So communists have always been critical of that kind of terrorism, even if it's done supposedly with the best of intentions. Obviously, in the case of ISIS, they don't even have a left program. They have this very reactionary, fundamentalist, religious agenda.
Well, I know that the anarchist idea or the anarchist practice is to start a revolution with individual anarchist terrorist actions, and by doing that to inspire other people to uprise and to start a revolution.
Yes, I know, but it doesn't work that way. That's the problem. It doesn't work. This is where we have a fundamental difference with anarchists about it. But this is, the debate between Marxists and anarchists has got a long history to it. Anarchists stand for a classist society, and so do communists. The question is, how do you get there? That's where there's I guess significant differences.